All right, how's everyone doing? Good. Some technical difficulties getting started today. So, got a broken bulb. No rush. All right. We're already running in to our allotted time here, so get going here. Come on, let's go. All right. Action. Okay, good. All right, so hello and welcome to thank you for coming to my panel, The Early Days of Sonic ROM Hacking. I'll be talking about the creation of the Sonic Stuff, I have a microphone too. I'll be talking about the creation of the Sonic Stuff Research Group, particularly what inspired me to create the group, the technical challenges I overcame, and its continued legacy. And fun stat, this is the third time I'm giving this talk. I'm doing a summer talking tour of sorts. I just spoke a few weeks ago at Drexel University, and then today doing Retro World, and then the University of Delaware in a few weeks. So pretty cool stuff. Disclaimer, this lecture is a work in progress. I've done my best to present the information as accurate as possible. Some details may have been stated incorrectly or omitted erroneously, so feel free to contact me with corrections. I'll have my contact information at the end of this presentation. All right, so familiarity check. So could you please do me a favor? If you're familiar with the character Sonic the Hedgehog, can you please clap your hands? And please clap your hands to drown out all the attention that Norm, the game historian, is getting. Come on, you can do louder. Come on. There we go. All right, cool. All right, awesome. Now, can you please clap if you're familiar with either Sonic Mania or Sonic Origins? Okay, cool. And for the big one, please clap if you're familiar with the Sonic Stuff Research Group. Small claps there. Yeah, come on in. You're here for the panel, right?
I'm Lance.
Oh, you're Lance. Okay. Yeah, we had a little projector issue.
Yeah, that's why I came up with the spare.
So yeah, I think we're good now. So, all right, cool. Okay, so part one, SSRG, introduction. If you've never heard of the Sonic Stuff Research Group, well, I think most people here did, but we'll get into that. So, who am I? My name is Andrew Wolan. Back in the 1990s and early 2000s, I was best known for creating or sponsoring various popular gaming-themed projects and websites. It began with Emulation Zone back in 1996, which started out as a site that talked about console emulation. It later branched out to cover a range of gaming and console emulation-themed projects such as ROM hacks and hacking utilities, video game fan sites, fan-made and homebrewed games, news coverage of the gaming industry, a console emulation-themed search engine/link database, which was rather unique at the time before Google took over the world, and an internet radio network, and more. And here's a sampling of the sites that I either created or sponsored during that time. The Sonic Fan Games HQ is one. Lance is, not Lance, but as Al's fixing the screen there. Sonic Fan Games HQ is one. Secrets of Sonic Team, Sonic RoboLast 2 is another sponsored project, Sonic HQ, and others. Of all these sites, today I'm probably most known for being the creator and co-founder of, see this laser printer's working good, the Sonic Stuff Research Group. And fun fact, the Emulation Zone was launched on August 28th, 1996. So today's this 26th birthday for the site, so yeah. I was gonna bring cake, but I didn't think it would be allowed. So we have a table that I could have used it, but. All right, so what is the SSRG? Now, I had a hard time coming up with a good description about the site, so instead I came up with an elevator pitch description that I feel touches all the major points. It was founded in the mid-1990s by myself and future Sonic Mania and Sonic Origins developer Simon Stealth Tomley. The SSRG popularized hacking of old Sega Genesis Sonic the Hedgehog games by helping to expose the secrets contained within them. The site also helped make hacking of old video games accessible to a mainstream audience and would be responsible for launching the modern Sonic ROM hacking scene. The site also popularized Sonic fan games, which led to the official release of the Sega game Sonic Mania, which was developed by fans who got their start at SSRG. It was even voted best Sonic the Hedgehog's website in 1999, 2000, and 2001. And because of my early contributions, community leadership, and support, I've been recognized as a founding father of the Sonic ROM hacking. Though I feel stepdad is a more appropriate term, I didn't invent Sonic ROM hacking. I adopted it, raised it, taught my moral values, and then after I got older, it told me, "You're not my real dad," left, and now won't speak to me. It would be nice to get a Christmas card every so often for my troubles, but hey. So what is the Sonic ROM hacking community? It's a community devoted to uncovering secrets found within the Sonic games, such as lost levels, unused graphics, and other game assets. This information is extracted from commercially released games, prototypes, old press releases, magazine articles, the development process, and more. Whatever we can get our hands on, pretty much. The community also documents technical details about the game and also provides disassemblies which allow others to create mods ranging from simple sprite swaps to new characters, levels, artwork, and even new gameplay. The data collected is a culmination of the contributions made by many, many, many people, not just a few folks, and is fueled by the fact that the game itself is hidden with so many secrets that it makes for a fun and addictive technical treasure hunt. And here's a list of my favorite Sonic ROM hacks that were made over the years. I was once asked what I thought was the most influential ROM hack, and I feel it would have to easily be the Sonic 1 and Knuckles hack by Stealth. It did something Sega was unable to do at the time, at least publicly, which was makes Knuckles a playable character in Sonic 1. And what he did was he took data from like 3 different versions of the game, a prototype and the final version of Sonic 3, and I forgot what else he used, but he kind of matched into like a Frankenstein kind of project and pulled it off that way. All right. And to think all this started on a website founded up I-91 in Western Massachusetts. No clap this time? Yeah, Western Mass, yeah, representing, right? While it might seem easy to dismiss the earlier contributions as minor accomplishments compared to hacks made today, they were the early stepping stones that made more elaborate hacks possible. Furthermore, the community had to start somewhere, and SSRG was that starting point. All right, part 2, why I created SSRG. Now, to understand why I created the SSRG, you need to first understand the mindset I had at the time. And the best way to do that is to go back in time to the early 90s, and you can include the mid to late 80s as well. So technologically speaking, it was an exciting time. There were observable leaps in performance being made yearly. If you weren't paying attention, you could miss out. So for example, the blocky graphics seen in the Atari games, the Atari 2600, led to the cartoon-like graphics in the Sega Genesis 10 years later. And the TV show Reboot hinted the possibility of real-time 3D rendered graphics in the near future for video games. The Sega versus Nintendo rivalry was at its peak. Nintendo had just found their 16-bit stride with the SNES, while Sega finally found their mascot with Sonic the Hedgehog. The internet would be unrecognizable to many of today's users. It was not ubiquitous. Instead, it was a new, mysterious, and inaccessible place to many, but we all knew would be the future sooner or later. And Sega was busy confusing customers with the term blast processing. All right, crazy ideas and misconceptions. So speaking of blast processing, can you hear me fine? Yeah. Okay, good. So speaking of blast processing, the term was famously touted during TV ads promoting the release of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, at least in the United States. No one really knew what the term meant, but we all wanted it. So as a budding computer geek at the time, it got me thinking, if Sonic 2 runs that fast on a $200 console, how much faster would it run on a modern PC costing 10 to 20 times as much? Of course, I was oblivious to all the computer architectural differences, but I was still curious. The secret's in the VDP, not the CPU. Then one day, a neighborhood friend of mine showed me ads in a magazine for two devices called the Super Magic Drive and Super Wildcard. They allowed you to back up Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo game cartridges, respectively, to floppy disk. The image of the Super Magic Drive's right there. It was rather expensive, $400 to $600, if I'm not mistaken, which was the cost of a modest game library. But the device got me thinking, if the game could be copied to a standard floppy disk, does that mean you could also play that game on the PC? So we assumed that software, aka emulators, to run these ROM images on a PC not only existed, but they were also developed by Sega and Nintendo to aid game development, meaning they would play perfectly. And thus, such software was only accessible to elite members of underground communities, so you had to know someone in order to get a copy. Now, did I know any such people? No, but it didn't stop me from at least trying. So I poked around all the BBSes in my area, and the closest I got was a BBS that claimed to have ROM images of various Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis games. They wouldn't let me join because I wasn't elite enough. But keep in mind, the internet as we knew it today just did not exist. It was not easy to find answers to these seemingly easy questions. Hey, there was no Google. As a teen in the early 90s, it was hard to find information on such niche subjects unless you had connections. So that made finding answers to to my ideas a lot harder. I should have pressed that button sooner. All right. So BBSes. So prior to the internet, the only real source of niche information available to me at the time were the forums on local BBSes. Like for asking help on a level in a PC game, for example. So what is a BBS? Per Wikipedia, it's a computer server running software that allows users to connect to a system using a terminal program, primarily over a dial-up connection. Once logged in, a user can perform functions such as uploading and downloading software and data, read news stories and bulletins, exchange messages with other users through public message boards, and sometimes via direct chat, multi-node BBSs. The size range from a single node to a multi-node large network, such as AOL and Prodigy. Some are subscription-based, again, like AOL and Prodigy, while most BBSs tend to be free, only limited by your calling range. Some free BBSs were niche-based with focused content. And in a sense, it was similar to the internet at the time, but at a much smaller scale. So imagine having to make a long-distance phone call to download the latest graphics drivers. That was actually a thing at the time. All right. So as a teen, I frequent the local BBSs, at least the free ones. I thought they were cool and had the crazy desire to run my own BBS one day, but there was a problem. Running one was cost prohibitive, especially when you're a teen with not a lot of disposable income, or no disposable income. First of all, you had to have a dedicated PC as a BBS server. You needed a dedicated phone line for people to call in on. You could only serve one person per phone line at a time, and it was typically limited to people within your calling range. But I kept the dream of running one in my back pocket, that someday I'll be able to afford to run my own one day. I might run my own BBS. And then came the internet. In the mid-90s, dial-up internet access had gained mainstream appeal. It gave the general public access to more information than that found on BBSs. This in turn allowed me to pursue my questions on console emulations and thus discover the console emulation community on IRC chat. Many ISPs offered free web hosting as part of their internet access package, and I quickly realized the implications. Once a website was uploaded, it could run on a remote server, not on my PC. So there was no need to have a dedicated computer to run as a server. Could serve multiple people at once from anywhere around the globe, which at the time were mind-blowing. Was limited to how much data I could post at a time, tens of megabytes versus hundreds or even gigabytes of data if you had your own BBS, but the bandwidth was much higher on a web server. Think megabits versus 33 kilobits max on a BBS node. And some ISPs had generous traffic or disk space quotas, or did not strictly enforce their quotas, allowing for growth on a budget. And also, the web has a graphical interface and not a text interface. So in other words, it addressed the issues I had hosting a BBS. So maybe I should build a website one day instead of a BBS. And if so, what would it be about? All right. Then came the motivation. So with the web being the next thing, a group of college buddies made a friendly no cash bet to see who could come up with the best website. This content was significant for me because it encouraged me to not only start a website, but one that was unique enough to win this little contest. So now I knew I wanted to create a website, but I wanted to cover a subject that others were not doing at the time, or not well. Something unique that would be a contribution to the growing web. So I settled on two ideas. The first was a console emulation website that was suited for a general audience named Emulation Zone. Now at the time, trustworthy information on console emulation was hard to find, and there were many fake emulators circling around as well. So there was real value providing accurate information on this growing field. And the second site was a Sonic the Hedgehog fan site that focused on the games themselves and not on fan material. This site was named Andy's Sonic the Hedgehog webpage, My Way. And fun trivia fact, the site's often misnamed as Andy's Hacking Station, which is likely confusion with the site Tom's Hacking Station. And both of these sites kicked off in the summer of 1996, 26 years ago
Who's
today.
that in the photo?
That's me, 26 years ago.
Wow.
I was taken at the computer lab at school. I don't think they knew I did that, but whatever. What was that?
I wish I was that cool 26 years ago.
Yeah. Sneak in there like, yeah, look at me. All right, part 3, birth and rise of SSRG. All right, so the birth of the Sonic Stuff subsection. So after gaining access to the console emulation community on the internet, I eventually scratched my itch on seeing how Sonic the Hedgehog would play on a PC. From there, I turned my attention to Sonic and Knuckle lock-on technology gimmick. So after obtaining ROM images of Sonic and the Knuckles in Sonic 3, which in itself was a challenge at the time, I figured out how to merge the cards together and later wrote a document about it and naming it the Sonic and Knuckles Lock-on Technology Hacking Guide. The guide was published on Emulation Zone in a subsection called Sonic Stuff and would become the community's first Sonic ROM hacking guide. How are we doing on time, by the way? We know we started a little late. 120? Okay. All right. Actually, we're doing pretty good. So, am I going too fast? Or speed's okay? Okay. All right, I don't want to run over to the next panel like I did last time. All right, so shortly afterwards, I became online friends with Stealth. He showed me a screenshot of what is now known as the hidden credits listing on the Sonic Teams Present screen in Sonic 1, which is the middle image there. The screenshot was added to the growing Sonic Stuff subsection, which was then promoted to its own page on Emulation Zone. We then started talking about the oddities and secrets found in the Sonic the Hedgehog games. And during a discussion, I recall the conversation I had a few years prior with some high school friends about some weird images they found on Sonic CD. And I didn't think much about it at the time, but I did find it curious. And little did I know that was my first exposure to the secrets found within the Sonic the Hedgehog games. And it was at that moment I realized that the Sonic games were just packed with secrets and other fascinating oddities left over from development. I also realized that no one was trying to document it either, which presented an opportunity. And for whatever reason, it seemed taboo to others at the time to talk about it. At this point, my interest in Sonic games and console emulation merged, and I wanted to focus on digging into the games or hacking into them to unlock their secrets. My chief motivation was the fact that, again, no one had a website covering this topic, never mind trying to explain any of it. In fact, I was surprised that while other major game series had hacking communities and editing tools for their games, none had appeared for the Sonic the Hedgehog games. You know, for example, the Mario games had a tool called Mario Improvement. Anyone remember that tool? Mario Improvement. I think Nintendo forced them to shut the website down. Maybe that's why.
It sounds like Nintendo.
Yeah. All right, one big secret that was starting to be discussed at the time was the possible existence of a missing level in Sonic 2. It was fueled by screenshots of an unknown level in Sonic 2 found in gaming magazines, which is the image on the screen. And a hacker by the name of Tom Sonic figured out how to access the remnants of this level in the commercial release of the game using a game cheat device, thus proving the existence of the level. The graphics were garbled, as seen in the photo, but they were otherwise playable. And sometime later, Andre Dirk came forward to announce that he had a cartridge with Sonic 2 that contained a missing level. The cartridge is believed to contain a copy of a Sonic 2 prototype that was stolen from a trade show and later distributed in underground markets in Hong Kong. And he was later invited I later invited him to join SSRG, and he did, or the Sonic Stuff as it was known at the time. And with the site growing in size, I figured it was appropriate to rename the site to reflect its growth, and thus Sonic Stuff was renamed to Sonic Stuff Research Group. So we went from 2 people to 3, and I figured, hey, it's a group now, so let's rename it accordingly. While Andre Dirk's prototype proved the existence of a playable lost level, he did not have a means to dump the ROM image and share it with others. Since the cart in question was once available in the underground markets of Hong Kong, it is possible that the cart had been dumped by someone in the region and placed online. So using this approach, a person by the name of Simon Y scanned various Chinese language websites in hope of coming across an image of the prototype. And so a few months after Andre's announcement, Simon Y came across the prototype on a Chinese GeoCities website. It was the same as Andre Dirk's, and it allowed fans to experience a lost level for themselves. And after Simon's announcement, I went out of my way to ensure Simon received credit for the discovery. And today, the ROM image is known as the Simon Y Sonic 2 Beta ROM, thanks to my actions. And it's the only, I think it's one, if not the only prototype to be named after a person not associated with the development of the game. In hindsight, it should have been named the Dirk Y Sonic 2 Beta ROM. After all, Andre Dirk was the only person known to have a physical copy of the ROM, while Simon Y went out of his way to track down the ROM image. You could also argue that this ROM was common knowledge in some circles in China back in the day, so what Andre and Simon did was introduce a prototype found in Asia to the Western world, which gives you an idea the information disconnect the world still had at that time. Being, this is like the mid to late 90s at this, no, this is late 90s at this point. And shortly after, you had a question? No. And shortly after this time, Simon White joined the SSRG team. So you may be asking, why did I name the site Sonic Stuff? Kind of come up with a better, more clever sounding name. Well, believe it or not, the site's name was influenced by a local sporting apparel store named Sports Stuff. It's a store that was advertised heavily on local television, so it was a name that we all heard now and then. The name Sonic Stuff was not meant to be permanent, but as a collection of Sonic-related oddities grew, I struggled to come up with a word that properly categorized all the Sonic the Hedgehog-related stuff that we were collecting. So Sonic Stuff. Sonic Stuff stuck. Tongue twister there. Furthermore, the later renaming to SSRG had a nice ring to it, so Sonic Stuff became permanent. All right, growing the site. In order for the site to continue growing, it became obvious that I needed to learn about ROM hacking. Outside of digital electronics, I was not well versed in low-level computer hardware architecture, nor had I done any assembly-level programming. Thus, I had little knowledge on how to hack ROM images, but I was still willing to learn. But how would I go about doing this? Well, surround myself with people knowledgeable about ROM hacking. I would go out and recruit the best ROM hackers I could find to join the group. But how would I go about recruiting them? It's not like I had a budget to pay them anything. Well, prior to SSRG's renaming, Emulation Zone underwent a heavy back-end transformation. The entire site was moved to a new host off an ISP and onto a site called ZTNet, which was operated by Zach Williams, and they're still our host to this day. That site was also moved to its own domain name of emulationzone.org. And fun fact, we announced that we were buying emulationzone.com, and a few days later, some cyber squatter bought it before we could. And they later tried to sell it to us for thousands of dollars, so we got emulationzone.org instead. I even contacted the guy recently. He says he wants $2,800. I'm like, I'll see you in another 30 years and see if you change your mind. The move allowed the site to grow in capacity, have dedicated server resources if needed, and had the capacity to host other projects and websites, which at the time was a big deal. So to recruit talent, I leveraged what server resources I had and offered free hosting. Now, as SSRG was growing, in the back of my mind, there was a set of standards which I had the site adhere to. It may not seem like much, but I feel these standards are what helped grow SSRG and recruit the best. In fact, the Sonic ROM hacking sites of today follow these more or less. All right, so the first one is always credit the person who contributes to finding, i.e. give credit to where it's due. This stemmed from a class discussion in college about citing work in academia, maybe my professor James Allen at UMass. It's a simple gesture that shows appreciation, which in turn encourages further contributions by others. Number two, collect all information into some kind of formal, insurable documentation form. Instead of having information scattered on multiple websites, consolidate it into one formal document or website to make it easier to find and share information. It was ambitious in the era before wikis or web-based Office applications, and it required a lot of manual work, but we still went for it. Number three, document how certain hacks were performed so others could learn from them and recreate them. As I said, I wanted to learn about ROM, how to hack ROM images, but I had no clue how. The next best thing I could do was surround myself with knowledgeable people and learn from them. Like Tom Sonic, for example, who's pretty helpful. He wrote some documentation, and I had him, can you explain how you found the levels in Hidden Palace Zone in the commercial release of Sonic 2? And he wrote a document about that, and then he released some other documents and said, hey, can you go a little more detail about that? And over time, he produced a lot of this extra documentation to describe how he went about doing his work, which was really helpful, not only me, but to others. All right, number four, make content accessible to the public at large. Discoveries and other information were not going to be reserved to elite hackers. They are for everyone. The idea more or less followed the mantra that both Mark Anderson and the public had for the internet in the 90s. Does anyone remember who Mark Anderson was? Founder of the World Wide Web. His idea was to make information free and accessible to everyone, and that is what drove the huge growth of the internet in the 90s. All right, and the language we used should make it coherent for most audiences to understand. So we're going to try to keep down the technical jargon as much as we could. And these standards allowed SSRG to grow in popularity. It also helped attract numerous talented hackers and programmers to the team, and attract the best we did. So on screen is a list of hackers I then recruited for the site. Many would become up-and-coming stars to the community. The most famous name here is Taxman, who started the Sonic CD beta page and worked on the fan game Sonic Retro. He would go on to work on Sonic Mania. Another big name is Tom Sonic, whose earliest contributions helped kickstart the ROM hacking community. Now, do any of these names look familiar up here, besides those two? Which ones?
Christian Whitehead, Sonic Blur, me, Ryan Langley.
Huh. Yeah, Ryan Langley, he's, he worked, I'll talk about him later. Anyone else?
What was Saxman's website?
Saxman, he was a member of SSRG, and then
Did he have his own site at all?
he split off, and then I don't know what happened to it after that.
I seem to, maybe I'm remembering it completely wrong, but didn't he do music?
Yeah,
He did?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so.
he played a saxophone, hence Saxman. He actually did a recording of Yaki Sax, which was actually pretty good. And speaking of Ryan Langley, Ryan Langley approached me one day about starting the Sonic Fan Games HQ, a website devoted to fan-made Sonic the Hedgehog games. The site would tap into the growing interest in fan-made Sonic games. And at the time, Sega had not released a major Sonic the Hedgehog game in 4 years, so fans were starting to create their own. The proposed site would require a lot of disk space and create a huge amount of server traffic, but it would be unique. And Ryan asked, he asked me many years later, why did you approve this? This was like, this would have been very costly. I said, hey, I gave it okay because it was the natural, logical next step for the growth of SSRG in the community. Simple as that. And the site ended up being one of the most bandwidth-heavy sites on the server, but it proved to be very popular. The site's popularity would lead to SAGE, or the Sonic Amateur Games Expo, run by Ryan Bloom. I'm not sure if he still does that or not. It's a yearly event that features fan-made Sonic the Hedgehog games from fans of all levels of experience. And the big takeaway here is that the site was a starting point for some future game developers, which I will get into in a little bit. Explosion in popularity. So as the site continued to grow, it exploded in popularity. So much so that it was voted best Sonic site 3 years in a row, 1999, 2000, and 2002 by TSSE, a website that we hosted, though I'm confident there was no conflict of interest in that. The site was even available in 5 languages, which at the time was a really novel idea. You can see there you just select a language on the little menu bar there. And part 4, my departure. So in the fall of 2001, the site, at the height of its popularity, I stepped away from SSRG and handed it over to Stealth. With the site doing so well, why did I leave? Well, for one, a lack of free time. I had just graduated college, began a career in my field, and was starting grad school. Therefore, I would not have the free time needed to handle the day-to-day responsibilities. Second, it was just becoming less fulfilling. I was spending less time working on technical endeavors and more on site management. And at first, I was fine with that, but I later found myself spending most of my time mediating disputes, which is not the way I wanted to spend my limited free time. And perhaps I could have worked through these issues. In fact, after I handed the site off to Stealth, it ran into some trouble, so I came back and tried and helped restore order. The following reason made me leave for good. A broken PowerPoint presentation. No. The relentless, obnoxious behavior of some people. As the site grew in popularity, it also drew the attention of numerous misfits and toxic influencers. I didn't have the time or the stomach to argue with people who just wanted to be obnoxious and flat out cruel to the community members for their amusement. Now, as bad as they were, they still needed an audience to support what they were doing. Otherwise, they would just fade away into oblivion. Sadly, some community members actually defended these obnoxious individuals and their behavior and even aided in their activities. For example, some would give passwords to protected areas of SSRG, would reinstate members who were kicked from forums, etc. Eventually, I had enough, so I left the community and shut the site down in January of 2003. Some staff members left the community at that time as well. In addition, some would-be contributors were scared away after witnessing some of the problematic community members' antics. I do believe that some people are unfairly associating the folks who contributed in the early days of the Sonic ROM hacking with the misfits that made the community unpleasant. Perhaps not publicly, but maybe internally. It's unfair for their early contributors to the community, no matter how big or small. And one final note here, the site was shut down for some time, but it was eventually handed over to Stryker along with Stefan UK and Ordos Alpha, and they reopened it back in 2005. Is Ken here?
Hey,
there
that's
it is.
me.
Hey, take a bow. Cameraman today. That's my ride, my car had issues today. So why would anyone tolerate their bad behavior, especially if it was so destructive and toxic to the community? Well, for one, notoriety. Making a discovery or uncovering secret insider information can lead to notoriety, but such information can be hard to obtain and new discoveries can be far and few in between. Some community members were willing to dismiss morally questionable behavior to anyone that can produce new information. Second is social approval. Some people would enact questionable behavior to gain the social approval of problematic members. Three, some were bullied or coerced, which oddly enough remains a problem in the tech industry to this day, preventing talent from entering the industry. And four, and some did it out of boredom, which goes to show their character. Now, would you risk your safety or dignity to gain the approval of people you don't even know? Probably not, but some would. Like that little drawing there. Unreleased information, just hop on in. As sprites of Sonic wearing goggles. Dark side of the Sonic community. Now, don't get me wrong, the Sonic hacking community has good and talented people who are doing unique and innovative projects. But unfortunately, the community is also frequented by people whom you wouldn't want to associate with. And they seem to come out of the woodwork whenever I appear, like I'm some kind of community boogeyman. But don't let them spoil your experience. So my advice, be careful with your personal information with interacting with folks there, and use an alias, not your real name. It's not recommended for anyone under the age of 18. And to be honest, you may want to try a different community. All right, epilogue. So what kind of legacy did SSRG leave behind? What marked it leaving the gaming community at large? Well, for one, it inspired future websites that followed and improved upon the model established by SSRG. Some would also argue it also popularized the finding of unused and cut material from video games. Two, the Sonic gaming secrets is still a popular topic and new discoveries are still being discovered. For example, last year, the Sonic 1 beta cartridge was found in the UK back in 2000, no, not 2001. Boy, I'm getting old, 2021. Number three, a vibrant Sonic fan game and ROM hacking community are still kicking and thriving. Sage is still held yearly and even raises money for charity, which I think is pretty cool. And there's something called the Sonic Hacking Competition, or SHC. It's run by Sonic Retro. It's like Sage, but for ROM hacks. And the period which I ran SSRG is regarded as the golden age of Sonic ROM hacking, making it a model for other sites to strive towards. And number five, the big one, various members of the community went on to the game industry. So years later, Stealth and Taxman would collaborate and work on Sonic Mania and also Sonic Origins. Various contributors to Sonic Fan Games HQ and Sage would later go on to work in the gaming industry. One such person was Jared Kazel, who started out doing level maps for games in the Sonic Fan Games HQ and would end up being the level editor for Sonic Mania. Another was Ryan Langley, which we've mentioned before, whose roots start at the Sonic Fan Games HQ and led him to Half Brick and now with Peak Poke. Yara Harhar, real name Andrew Minuri, he works at Unity Technologies, not United Technologies, as in the Unity engine. And there are others, but they wish to remain anonymous at this time. As for me, I became the community boogeyman of sorts, so is my life. How are we doing for time here? We got plenty of time, okay. So it's been over 20 years since I last worked on SSRG, and are there any observations or lessons learned that I can share that are relevant today? And yeah, there are a few. One, never underestimate the value of creating a platform. Looking back, why was SSRG successful? At its core, what SSRG created was a platform for people to share information and allow ideas to develop. Without it, things wouldn't have progressed as much as they had. Not only that, but having a platform also gives contributors a forum which to promote their work effectively with interested people, thus encouraging others to contribute, which in turn provides a feedback loop into the system. So it's like an evil genius system where things just kind of feeds into itself. In the end, the most important step in establishing a platform is just to go ahead and create it. The tools available today did not exist when SSRG was created, but we still managed to create our own. And remember, the site was created, the site was run via email and text messages. Rarely were there any voice communications. And I only met 1 or 2 people in real life. Yeah, Ken and I forgot who the other person was. So, even to this day, 20 years later, I still haven't met most of these people. Number 2, gatekeeping is okay to keep the riffraffs out. Now, I'm a firm believer in making the information that SSRG collected public, but as SSRG grew in popularity, it attracted various troublemakers and riffraffs, which was not something we had planned for. Keep the information public, but also enact some barriers in gatekeeping to keep the troublemakers from becoming a problem with day-to-day operations, aka cybersecurity. Number 3, this is just a general observation. I feel we take for granted that we can speak to anyone around the globe as if they were in the next town. Back when I created the site, chatting with someone from another part of the world was a big deal. Like, I remember like talking to someone in Israel and Australia. I was like, wow, I'm talking to someone out there. This is so wild. And now it's like, my day-to-day work, I speak to people in India, Europe, and across the U.S., and that's just in the morning. So today, like I said, I speak to people from all around the globe just for work, and we seem to take such communications for granted, and we forget that we are interacting with people from different countries and from different cultures. At least not until they mention that, hey, today's a national holiday for us, and we're going to be taking the day off. So. And perhaps it's just a side effect of the internet making the globe seem a bit smaller every year, but still a valid observation. All right. And what about that bet I mentioned? So Dan Chandler, one of my friends, he had the waste of bandwidth page that ran various Java applets that displayed various graphics and thus wasted your bandwidth. Mike Eager had a page that was so bad his ISP deleted it. Though looking back, we think he changed ISPs at the time, and thus they would have deleted it after he canceled his account. He now has political powers, so I wouldn't mess with him. Tom Connery started TC Technologies and now runs Ani Media. It's a website design company. And as for me, I retired from Emulation Zone in 2006, but I continued to run a handful of subsites. I then started a website about softball, which later became versussoftball.com, which was featured in an article for the Wall Street Journal back in 2014. And oddly enough, some of my early softball pages were archived as part of gaming history of the web. Likely because it was part of emulations.org originally, but I just find that like really weird. Like people want to see me archive how bad I played in some softball games. So that's part of internet history and I can't change it, but hey. How many people can say that? It's like, yeah, I played rec softball and people still remember that. Okay, so I'm at the end of my presentation here, and we have 10 minutes for Q&A. I just made this one slide here if you want to take your cell phones out and take a quick snapshot of it. This is some further enrichment. There's a nice documentary someone mentioned about BBSes. Really cool, it's bbsdocumentary.com. And I also mentioned a video I like a lot. It's called The Art of Wares. It's on Vimeo. They go very good. They do a really good. They show a lot about the Wares scene, which is the people who shared pirated software. But they also talk about the artwork that went along with that, and also the what was considered the elite people scene of that time. So it's if you want further context about that. Also, here's my contact information. Take a screenshot of that if you want. Here's my LinkedIn profile, my email, YouTube, where you can probably find a recording of this talk, and my Instagram, which has nothing to do with technology. It's just a site where I do cosplay photography as a fun hobby, like with Mr. Banana there. But, wait, what's your real? Wait, it's what's your alias again?
Well,
yeah.
The Dirty Banana.
Dirty Banana, that's it. Yes, yeah. That's right. Today's the Disco Banana. That's right. All right, so that's the end of my talk here. We got plenty of time here for Q&A. Any big questions? Got some questions here? Sure.
You were talking about earlier how you were in the scene and it was hard to really stay in the community and do things because you graduated and you were trying to look for a job and everything. Yeah. I'm actually currently in that situation. I've been more of a lurker in the community, but doing a few things now, graduated. How would you try to find a job within your field, but still try to keep in touch with the community every now and then?
Yeah, so I got lucky. I got a job before I graduated, so I cheated. That's not an answer I ever can. And also, that was before the crash of 2001. That's just how the market was back then, so I got lucky. But for you, when I was doing a double master's, computer science and computer engineering, so working on hacking games was actually good to develop my background in this material. So you could sneak it into a job interview, say, hey, I do this on the side, just so they know that you're actively doing some stuff in the background. You just didn't go to college, and now you're just letting your skills rot. So, so my advice for you, find something that interests you. It doesn't have to be Sonic. It could be something else, just something that you find yourself and passionate about. And it's also something that's within your wheelhouse, so you can actually make contributions and produce something, so that you go to a job interview, you can say, hey, here's this level I designed, or here's like this mod I did, and I can talk to you about the architecture of, I don't know, the 68K processor in the Sega Genesis, or this 6502 processor in the NES, for example. You talk about that at a job interview, you get their attention pretty quickly. So, all right. Yep. You had a question.
So you're just completely out of the Sonic scene now, and you've been out for like 20 years, and like, do you, but you don't seem to like, you seem ambivalent about it. Do you ever miss it, or do you?
I mean, I'm not happy at how it ended. I mean, my goal was I make the site, I just hand it off, and just be happy with that. But the way it ended with all that toxic stuff that happened, that left a sour taste in my throat. I mean, to me, I didn't mind if like someone made a website that was better than mine. Like, yeah, go ahead. I'm not going to be mad about it. It was just the way that, oh, we like this bike better because he was obnoxious and a jerk to everyone else. It's like, well, that's not really the way it should be.
So you have no desire to be involved, like, because right now it seems it's very advanced now. There's wikis and it's full of information and stuff. Still, like you said, they just dumped the Sonic 1 prototype.
Yeah.
There's still really cool stuff coming.
I'd like to get involved in some projects. If someone's saying to me, hey, Andy, I want to do like a documentary series about hacking ROM images. We'll work with some of the hackers out there today, so you can pick their minds. Like, yeah, I'll join that. If it's, I mean, I started SSRG as a solo project. Would I want to do that again? No, that's just, I don't have the time to do that, such a solo project again. It was so time consuming, and it was just a labor of love to get to where it was at that time. And to do that again from scratch, I couldn't do that. But yeah, I mean, there are bad people in the community, but there are also good people in there. And like I said, I wouldn't mind working with other people that want to do something positive and make I don't know, like a YouTube series on how to hack ROM images, or I do these speaking engagements just for fun, and I have a lot of fun time talking to people about it. Does that answer your question?
Well, I guess I was basically curious because a lot of the people you mentioned are still like kind of involved in so, like a lot of those people you mentioned in your talk are still involved in Sonic ROM hacking in some degree or another, but you, like the way you like from your talk, it seems to be in your past. You've moved on.
Yeah, because I became like the community boogeyman. Like, people blame me for all the problems in the past. It's like I just want to come in there and talk to people, and people just try to bring up the past. I'm like, it's like, dude, that was 20 years ago. Why are you still bringing it up? I just.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, they still do that.
Wow. I'm
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm just, I'm like a high level lurker. I get excited when they release a new prototype, but that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried talking on the Sonic Retro message board, and I just said, hey, I did this talk, and they're like, oh, it's Andy Wolan. It's like, and they started all talking crap about it. I was like, really? Talk about the talk. Make fun of my video editing. Like, don't go after me personally.
I'm sure the ears at least. I mean,
yeah, go after my ears. Come on, I'm giving you a lot of good source material here. Oh, I actually bought some tails for this outfit, but that's not gonna be ready for a few weeks. But that'd been so cool to have like matching tails with like tails from the video game series. But all right, you have a question?
All right, I have a couple questions.
Okay.
I want to know, what is your favorite 2D Sonic game?
Sonic 1.
Oh, your Sonic.
Sonic 1. I love it. It's for some reason, the simplicity of that. It's just Sonic, the levels. That's it.
Okay.
It's just simple. It's fun. They were exploring a lot of ideas, and you can tell it from the level design. They found their stride with Sonic 2 and Sonic 3, but they had their own flavor. But the flavor in Sonic 1 was just a little different. I like that one better.
And then what's your favorite 3D Sonic game? Oh, sorry.
3D Sonic is Sonic Adventure 1. I had a lot of fun memories of that one. So, you had any more? Okay.
What did you think of the Sonic 1 prototype? Like when it finally came out, it was I was so stoked to play it, and I thought it was actually really interesting. Like, and it had stuff that there were little tidbits that hadn't even been seen in magazines. Like everybody knew about the giant boulder in Green Hill, but what we didn't know, at least I didn't. It wasn't documented in those magazines that it was in every act of Green Hill.
Yeah.
It's like a running joke
Yeah.
throughout Green Hill Zone. It's in Act 1, Act 2, and then it's like a joke that got lost because when you fight Eggman, it's like he grabbed the ball and you're fighting it, but in the final game that joke is totally lost.
Yeah,
you're just fighting some random ball. It's like, you see what I mean?
Yeah, what they were trying to do with every level, like Eggman would have his little spaceship thing would follow a theme with the level.
Yeah.
So I think in Spring Yard he was supposed to have springs where you couldn't hit him in a certain direction. You would bounce off because you would.
Remember?
They found some parts in the prototype where
I
they
don't
think
Spring
that's
Yard
what.
has a boss in the prototype, but maybe and like
No, still
playable. Yeah, I think in the prototype there's only one boss actually. There's only Green Hill that's playable.
Yeah.
But what do you think of that prototype overall? With that it finally came out like 20 years or more.
I wanted to buy it.
After the Sonic.
What I wanted to.
It sold at auction.
It sold for $15,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I thought it would sell for more.
I thought it was, at that price, crap. I mean, if you bought that, you could flip it already now for twice because of inflation. But yeah, you're right. It had a lot of neat stuff in there.
Yeah.
That's what made everyone go
It's
gaga. Or
fascinating, yeah.
I think my favorite part, obviously the missing the boulder in the first level. In the Quag Ruins, they had like a different background that was shown in some screenshots of the magazine, and then there's like cave where you get it as an air pocket, which was it just tells you what they were thinking. It's those kind of things what they were thinking at that time for the game. You just go back every so often, revisit, and think about oh, this is really neat. They were thinking about putting this into the game. All right, any other questions in the back? You look like you have a question. No. Okay. Oh, okay.
He has a question.
Oh, yeah, you got a question.
For the future, I personally still hope and think there are some Sonic games and or unreleased betas, because we know the Sonic 1 that had those like not robots, those like purple guys with the like red gloves that were in like the magazine of like an early alpha. You know what I'm talking about?
Did they hold Sonic into a ball or something?
No, he's talking about the Tokyo Toy Show demo from 1990.
Oh,
that's been lost.
Yeah.
The guy it would turn into a little ball, which I think they used in Sonic's in the Spring Yard level. That little thing, you go down that big ramp and this thing kind of like a fake Sonic.
Oh yeah, I know which one about the armadillo.
Yeah, I think that's what they reused it in the game.
Yeah.
But there was.
Yeah, but I still hope there's things like that.
Yeah, the creator of Sonic he asked everyone to say, does anyone have the Tokyo game show demo? And they can't find it. And there's people who are making their own ROM hacks, and they actually did a pretty good remake of that little sign that says, I forget what it says, like the big giant sign that says like "Welcome to Green Hill" or something.
I know there was a April Fool's joke like a couple of years back. Someone said, "Hey, I have it." It was pretty convincing. I think one of the creators said.
We have the music from it. Weirdly, we have some of the music from it. It like if you look on TCRF, Sega uploaded. Well, it's presumably the music from it. Sega had their online service in Japan, MegaNet, I think it's called. Like they had some kind of thing where you can dial up to MegaNet with your Mega Drive and listen to music from Genesis games. And the music they had from Sonic 1 does not match up to the final game. And it's the people who are at the trade shows apparently say that music matches their memory. But somebody recorded it off MegaNet. Okay, and it's on YouTube. Yeah. And it's a little different. The Green Hill music is much faster, and the special stage music is much slower, and much more mellow. It's a little. So we have some. It might be the music, presumably. Yeah. Check it out.
Yeah, and then there's the whole, besides the early betas of Sonic 1, there's the whole, ever heard of there's the cotton candy machine that was already like ripped. The popcorn machine. There was a cotton candy one where you flew a tornado that we only knew it was at one game show. Never seen it since. So I just hope those out here in the future.
I mean, there are rumors of people who have prototypes, but they don't want to release it because when you see that Sonic 1 prototype, went out for 15,000. They're like, oh well, maybe I can hang on to this for a few more years and maybe sell it for like 100 grand or 200 grand and retire.
If they don't degrade.
That's true too. Once they degrade, then their value does. Well, yeah, that's true. For a prototype, yes. If it was like commercial release, limited run, I feel if it's like in a sealed box, it would still hold value. But if it's a prototype, when you say, oh yeah, this is the prototype, but the memory contents have faded away, well, you could be lying to us. It could have just been ROM chips that you just threw in there and just put Sega on it. Did that. All right. Any other questions? We got like a few minutes. Yes, question in the back.
What are your thoughts on Sonic Xtreme? Did you know anything about that? I thought it was it didn't get released. I think it was maybe for the Saturn.
Yeah, it was a game that was developed. Yeah, it was developed. They were developing for the Saturn. It was supposed to be the Sonic release for that platform, if I understand correctly. It went through development hell at Sega, and there's some good documentaries about that. So they tried to, I think they used the engine from Knights, yeah, and then the guy who created that was like, no, you can't use my engine. So they had to like start all over from the beginning, and they wasted so much time like going back from the drawing board because of some political reason that's why the game was just. They said, all right, can it? But it had a cool idea with the fisheye view, and you could kind of run around blocks. There was actually a demo. Someone got a working version of that. Yeah, you can actually play. It's nothing special. You can run around in a world and experience the 3D rotations on the levels. I think there's rings and enemies. I could be wrong. Someone like they had the source code. They made it work on modern hardware and they worked with that. It's pretty cool to check out just to see what they're thinking. And the fisheye, I thought was it's something you can do easily with like OpenGL, but they just put that into the cartridge, into the game itself as a way to allow you to see more of the field of view, more of like the gameplay. So at that time, that was like a really innovative idea, and I'm surprised no one else has tried that. But maybe they tried it out and they realized it doesn't really add value, I guess. So any other questions? Yes.
Do you still play like the new modern Sonic games when you find time to?
I don't play in the modern. I don't really have time to play the modern 3D ones. I mean, I have like. With the Sonic Generations, I got that one. I played it for a little bit. I just didn't have time to continue it like I wanted to.
That's the reissue of the first few Sonics. Oh no!
Oh no! Sonic. They remade everything.
Yeah,
so.
Sonic Origins. I'm thinking of Sonic Origins.
Yeah, they took all the levels and remade them into 2.5, and then they also have like a 3D version you can play, which I think is
that's
pretty neat.
about 10 years ago, right?
Roughly speaking, yeah. Like, I think it was the Xbox 360 that generation. All right. Any other questions? We have 4 minutes to the next panel. Speaking of the next panel, are the folks here for the next panel? Bootleg games are actually not awful. Are they here? They're not here. Okay, well, I'm going to stick around for that one because I was going to talk about the Sonic 2 prototype in here. Because like I said earlier, that was a bootleg that was passed around in Hong Kong. And are you the next panel? Or are you here for the next panel? Okay. I was wondering who the next person is. And later today, if you're interested, at 4 p.m., there's a guy named Joe. He's going to have a talk about the NES Maker, which is a tool he made. It's software that allows you to make your own working Nintendo Entertainment System games, and they're actually playable on actual game cards. So I was on his Kickstarter. He's been doing it for years. It's really cool if you want to check it out. So if you like technology, ROM hacking, etc., that's another good one to check out. So. Hey, we finished on time. We got 3 minutes before. So if that's it. We'll just say thank you for coming to my panel and see you around. Thank you. And here's a fun picture of Mr. Banana here. Look at, you can't see that. Get it there quickly. There it is. There it is, Mr. Banana. All right, ladies and gentlemen. A space banana.
It was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. I would have had 6 cameras if this one would work.
Yeah, I mean, oh wow, I remember those.
The flip cams, yeah, they're so cheap now.
I didn't ask this during the talk because it's so kind of weirdly off topic, but
Yeah.
do you know where, okay, did Saxman ever do a song called I Love My Car?
That sounds vaguely familiar for some reason.
because see,
Like-
no, you said he did yakety sax, right? So he did music. I remember like 20 years ago going onto a site that looked like this, one of these, these.
Yeah, the FTP listing.
these generic what?
It's like an FTP listing.
Well, not, but it's HTTP. This is just an example.
Yeah.
One of these sites that's just nothing, just lists of files, and it
Yeah,
said
like
at the top Saxman, and it had some MP3 files in it. One of them was yakety sax, another one was called "I Love My Car."
Was he singing or just music?
There was some guy singing, "I love my car, I love my car. It'll take me far, it'll go anywhere. Drive it to a movie, drive it to the city, drive it to a rally, drive it every." That's been in my head for 20 years.
I vaguely remember it too. Like,
I
just a lot of
can't
memory.
find that song anywhere, and I'm trying to remember. I know I didn't make it up, but do you know anything about this? Where I can? It might have been hosted on your server.
I don't think it's on my server anymore.
Well, 20 years ago, but
20 years ago.
But I mean, like, it's just like I cannot. It's been driving me insane for 20 years. Like, I don't. No, really.
I can ask some people that would know.
Yeah, I don't like. I think it was by quote unquote Saxman, and there's no information about quote unquote Saxman or anything.
Yeah, try Googling Saxman.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and you try googling "I Love My Car," you get the song by Queen.
Yeah.
And
Was it his own composition or was it a?
I don't know. I just know it was a guy saying, "I love my car, I love my car." I could say, I remember it exactly. But I lost the MP3 and I can't find it. So can I give you my information? Yeah. So I can live in peace?
No living in peace.
This is one of those things I wasn't expecting. A music question.
That's why I
Michael
didn't
Jackson.
ask. That's why I didn't ask during the talk. It was so out there.
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you try to screenshot that?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, just do a screenshot.
Yeah,
Sure.
that was gonna be my question. I was like, I just want to.
Yeah. Oh, do you guys want me to record your thing? Because I have
Oh,
cameras.
it's whatever. Yeah, I have a camera too, but if you want to, I mean, sure.
I was let that one keep going and we can exchange
Yeah,
files
yeah,
later.
that sounds good.
I'll be in touch, my friend.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
After the expo, I was contacted by Joey, the fellow inquiring about the mysterious musical composition. Believing I may have the song, I checked my personal archives. There, I found several recordings made by Saxman, most of which were covers of songs composed by Huey Lewis and the News, while one was of Yakety Sax. Though I did not have the elusive "I Love My Car" song, it gave Joey confidence that we were on the right track. Joey then dug up an old blog post he had written in 2005 talking about the now lost song, which contained a direct link to the MP3. Though the link was broken, it showed that the file was hosted on shadowsoftgames.com, a place where Saxman was known to have stored some of his content in the past. So we were definitely on the right track. At this point, we decided to try and reach out to Saxman directly, but given that it had been many years since either myself or my colleagues had last spoken to Saxman, this outreach could prove challenging. As luck would have it, Joey discovered that Saxman had an active account on the Sonic Retro forums. The two of them chatted, and the elusive song was shared, much to the delight of Joey's ears. So, I'll leave you now with "I Love My Car" playing in its rediscovered glory, and perhaps you'll understand why it was so memorable to Joey.
Towards a car.
I'm tempted to go and just like, hey guys, I went to Andy's panel today. What do you think?
Yeah. What do you think of that?